I want you to picture something with me. It's just before sunrise on Saturday, April 25th, 2026. You live in Bamako. The first call to prayer hasn't even finished echoing across the rooftops, and somewhere in the distance, you hear it. A dull, heavy thud, then another, then gunfire. Real gunfire. Not the celebratory kind, not far-off training rounds, but the kind that means people in your city are about to die. By the time the sun is up, your defense minister is dead in his own home, killed alongside his wife and 2 of his grandchildren. The presidential palace is under attack. 5 other cities are being hit at the exact same moment. And the man supposed to be running the country, General Assimi Goïta, has gone into hiding. This is what happened in Mali a few days ago. And the only force, allegedly, that stopped the entire government from falling in a single morning was not the Malian army. It was Russian mercenaries, a unit called the Africa Corps. The official story coming out of Moscow is that Russia saved Mali, and I want to be straight with you up front. There's a version of that which is true, but there's a darker version underneath it that I don't think anyone is talking about loud enough. Because if Russia really did stop a coup, then how is the most senior pro-Russia official in the country dead? How did the rebels walk into Kidal and take it back? And what does it say about Africa's new security model that this is what winning now looks like? Stay with me. This story is bigger than one bad morning in Bamako. Before we begin, we want to ask for a favor from you. We want you to take out a second and hit that like button so YouTube can push this video. Let me walk you through what actually happened, because the timeline matters. At around 5:30 a.m. local time, 2 near simultaneous explosions hit Kati. Kati is the military garrison town just outside Bamako, and crucially, it's where General Goïta lives. It's also home to Mali's national arsenal, the country's main strategic weapons depot. Within minutes, heavy gunfire was reported across the Mamaribougou neighborhood, and almost at the same time, fighters were attacking Gao, Kidal, Sévaré, Mopti, and the town of Keita. According to the Russian Defense Ministry's own statement on April 28th, the attacking force numbered up to 12,000 fighters. Sit with that number for a moment, because when I first read it, I rolled my eyes. 12,000 sounds inflated. That's a small army. But then I looked at the map. 6 cities hit at once. You don't pull that off with a few hundred men and some pickup trucks. Whatever the real number is, the operation was massive. And that by itself tells you something. Somebody, somewhere, spent months planning this. 2 groups stepped forward to claim it. The first was JNIM, the Al-Qaeda-affiliated jihadist coalition that has been bleeding the Sahel for over a decade. The second was the FLA, the Azawad Liberation Front, a Tuareg separatist coalition that, and this is a detail most reports leave out, only formed in November 2024. So this was the FLA's first major coordinated offensive of this scale. And here's what I find genuinely surprising. These 2 groups should hate each other. JNIM wants a religious caliphate. The FLA wants a secular ethnic homeland called Azawad. Their visions for Mali have almost nothing in common. But on April 25th, they had one thing in common. They wanted the junta gone, and apparently that was enough. While Russian and Malian forces were holding the line in Bamako, something very different was happening 1,500 kilometers to the northeast. By mid-morning, video was circulating online of FLA fighters walking, not fighting, walking, into the residence of the regional governor of Kidal. The city was effectively gone within hours. And if you followed Mali for any length of time, you understand what a gut punch that is. Kidal isn't just another desert town. Kidal is the symbol. It's the spiritual capital of every Tuareg independence movement going back to the 1960s. The Malian government only fully recaptured it in November 2023, and that recapture was made possible by Turkish Bayraktar drones and Wagner Group fighters on the ground. So when I see Kidal fall again in 2026, I read it as more than a tactical loss. I read it as the unraveling of the entire 2023 narrative. The story Bamako had been selling its population for 2.5 years was, we kicked out France, we brought in Russia, we took back Kidal, the country is being put back together. April 25th tore that story up. Whatever Russia did or didn't do in the capital, it could not hold the most symbolic city in the country. And then, sometime that morning, came the news that I think will end up being the most consequential thing that happened that day. A vehicle packed with explosives was driven into the residence of Mali's defense minister, General Sadio Kamara. And let me be specific here, because his name has been misspelled across half the internet. Kamara, with a C. Kamara was killed instantly. His second wife was killed. 2 of his grandchildren were killed. President Goïta, whose own residence was hit in the same wave of attacks, narrowly escaped because he had already been evacuated. You have to understand who Sadio Kamara was. He was one of the colonels who carried out the 2020 coup that brought the junta to power in the first place. He was widely seen as the second most powerful man in the country, and according to NPR's reporting, was considered a potential future president. He was the senior figure most personally identified with the Russia partnership. The guy who flew to Moscow. The guy who signed the Wagner contracts. The guy who told French diplomats to leave. He died in his own home in the most heavily defended military town in the country, in an operation Russia is calling a victory. Hold both of those facts in your head at the same time, because I think the contradiction is the entire story. Russia did, by their own account and by eyewitness accounts out of Bamako, fight to keep the presidential palace standing. The palace held. But the man most responsible for inviting Russia into Mali, the architect of the entire pivot, was murdered with his family inside what was supposed to be the safest compound in the country. Both things are true, and I don't think you can call that an unambiguous win. I think it's a survival. By Sunday evening, Moscow was ready with its version of events, and I have to give the Russian information operation this much credit. They moved fast. In a French-language statement posted on X, the Africa Corps did not call this a terrorist attack. They didn't call it a rebel offensive. They called it a coup attempt, and specifically, a coup attempt orchestrated by Western intelligence services. They named France as the alleged trainer and funder. They alleged Ukrainian mercenaries on the ground using Western-made anti-aircraft systems, Stinger and Mistral manpads specifically, and they explicitly framed the whole thing as an attempt to humiliate Russia and prove Moscow couldn't protect its African partners, quote-unquote, just as it failed to protect its ally in Syria. The Syria comparison is doing a lot of work in that statement, and you should notice it, because Moscow is clearly still stinging from losing Assad in late 2024. Now here's where I want to be careful with you. The Ukrainian government and European authorities have not formally responded to these specific allegations as of this recording. The European Union issued a generic statement of solidarity with the Malian people. France did the same. So we cannot independently confirm Western intelligence was behind April 25th. But I would not call the claim impossible, and here's why. In August of 2024, after a separate disaster for Russian forces at the Battle of Tinzawatin, where Tuareg rebels killed dozens of Wagner mercenaries in an ambush, the spokesman for Ukraine's military intelligence agency, the GUR, went on Ukrainian state television and openly said the rebels had received useful information from Kiev that allowed the operation to succeed, admitted on camera. Mali responded by cutting diplomatic relations with Ukraine. The Jamestown Foundation later reported that some Tuareg fighters had reportedly been sent to Ukraine for training. So the precedent is there. The question is whether April 25th, 2026 was a continuation of that program at a much larger scale. I don't know. Nobody outside a very small intelligence community knows. But anyone telling you the idea is conspiratorial isn't paying attention to what was already publicly admitted in 2024. Now I want to pause here, because I know what some of you are already typing in the comments. Why are you giving Russia's claims any credit at all? Russia lied about Bucha. Russia lied about MH17. Why repeat their casualty numbers? I hear that. I'm not asking you to take Moscow as gospel. Russia's stated figure of 2,500 militants killed and 102 vehicles destroyed cannot be independently verified, and Wagner-Africa Corps statements have a long, documented track record of inflating enemy losses. Be skeptical. I am. But there's a different mistake on the other side, which is to dismiss everything Russia says simply because it's Russia saying it. Because the part you can actually verify is this. The Malian government did not fall on April 25th. The presidential palace held. By Sunday night, Bamako was under curfew, but still under government control. The Malian army, on its recent track record, almost certainly could not have done that alone. That's not propaganda. That's just what we can observe. The harder question isn't whether Russia helped. It's what Mali is paying for that help, and whether the price is worth it. Because here's the thing. Nobody in Bamako wants to say out loud, Mali doesn't have a plan B anymore. In 2022, Mali kicked out the French Operation Barkhane counterterrorism force. In 2023, Mali expelled MINUSMA, the United Nations peacekeeping mission. In 2024, Mali walked out of ECOWAS alongside Burkina Faso and Niger, and the three of them formed the Alliance of Sahel States, explicitly an anti-Western, pro-Russian bloc. So when April 25th hit, who was Bamako going to call? There is no UN force to deploy. There is no French rapid reaction unit across the border. ECOWAS isn't sending troops to a country that quit. The European Union sent a press release. The African Union sent a press release. The United States told its citizens to shelter in place. Even Turkey and China issued condemnations, which is generous of them, but condemnations don't stop bullets. The only people actually shooting back, alongside the Malian army, were Russian mercenaries. That's the deal Bamako signed up for, and Russia delivered on the immediate, narrow, palace defense version of the bargain. But the country lost its defense minister, lost Kidal, lost large parts of Gao, and lost whatever was left of the illusion that the security situation was getting better. According to this year's Global Terrorism Index, the Sahel accounted for over half of all terrorism-related deaths in 2025. Half. So the question I keep coming back to is, if Russia is the security partner and the Sahel is still the deadliest region on Earth for terrorism, what exactly is the partnership delivering? Let me close with what I think actually happens next. I don't want to leave you with just analysis. I want to give you something you can hold me to. Here's my prediction. By the end of 2026, I believe one of two things will be visible. Either Russia quietly increases the Africa Corps deployment in Mali by at least a few hundred fighters, possibly pulled from the Central African Republic or Libya, and OSINT flight tracking out of Latakia or Bangui will catch it. Or, and I think this is more likely, Mali starts quietly shopping for a third partner. Maybe Turkey, who already sells them Bayraktar drones. Maybe China, who is already building infrastructure across the Sahel. Maybe even, eventually, a back channel reopening with Algeria. Why? Because April 25th proved that Russia alone cannot deliver. The Africa Corps is good at certain things. Palace defense, drone strikes, embedded combat support. They are not good enough, in the numbers currently deployed, to hold a country the size of Mali against a coordinated insurgency of this scale. Bamako knows that now, and the junta will quietly, without ever admitting it publicly, start hedging. Watch for it. If I'm wrong, I'll come back here and tell you. But that's where I'm putting my chips. Let me end where I started, with ordinary people. The defense minister had a name, a family, grandchildren who died with him. The militants killed across Mali that morning had names too. Many of them young men from villages with no other options. The civilians in Kidal, in Gao, in Bamako had names. The market sellers who never opened their stalls. The kids who didn't go to school. None of them asked to be on a chessboard. Mali deserves better than to be the proving ground where Russia and Ukraine fight each other 6,000 kilometers from Donbass. The Sahel deserves better than to be the experiment in whether Western or Russian security models work on African soil. Africa deserves security that comes from Africans, from institutions accountable to the people they protect, from governments that don't have to outsource their own survival to foreign mercenaries, French, American, Russian, or otherwise. April 25th didn't answer that question, but it asked it very loudly, and the answer is going to define the rest of this decade for the entire Sahel. If this gave you a way of thinking about the story you hadn't seen before, share it. If you disagree with my prediction, tell me where I'm wrong in the comments. I read them. I'm Jay. See you in the next one.